Hey everyone, it's Dr. Rick with Herbal411.com, and I'm going to freestyle talk about fasting. Freestyle meaning I didn't prepare for this, and this is part of the fast. So let me just start out by saying that intermittent fasting is this big thing that was made popular by Jason Fung and the Obesity Code. If you are a book reader, please check it out on Amazon or listen to Jason Fung on some podcasts on YouTube. He's a Canadian, I think he's a kidney specialist in pediatrics, but I don't know if he's working anymore because he's so popular and doing books now. So that's usually the transition. I think my colleagues get so burned out because of insurance-based pain in the ass restrictions that we find other things to get into, like YouTube videos. Regardless though, it is a time of fasting now. In fact, Ramadan just began. That's a whole nation, my Muslim brothers, who fast during the day. That's a dry fast. And that's very honorable. I'm a Catholic, and we fast only 2 times a year. That's Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. I mean, you also abstain from meat on Fridays, some of us, but there's a lot of lax Catholics who don't do any stuff anymore. They just go to church on Christmas, and that's it. Shame on you. But regardless, the idea of fasting is ancient. And it has its roots, I think, in Catholicism, in religion. In my regard, it's Catholicism. And I love the readings of the Bible. And there's a passage from St. Paul to the Colossians, chapter 1, that talks about suffering and feeling the suffering that God went through, and then trying to mimic that, or at least identify with it. And it makes you closer to God. But regardless, you don't have to join a religion or to be spiritual. You can maintain spirituality, and like I've always professed, it will balance your life. I think spirituality is getting to know that you are one with the universe, or one. You're not alone. And in society now, especially with the isolation of COVID, you can feel very alone and anxious. And I think it actually turned on anxiety in the general population. But it's calming down, I hope, although a lot of my patients are still getting it. I run a COVID clinic. It's not as bad as before, and death is still there, but it's shrinking in percentages. Regardless, I'm deviating from my idea here. The idea of fasting is to do a reset. In Ayurveda is the traditional healing of India. And it's what we as yoga teachers try to practice or encourage our students to practice. And it makes sense because if you think about it, if you fast between seasons like winter and spring, summer, your gut has to get used to a different form of food. In theory, that makes sense because the gut microbiome is used to concentrated, dense nutrition from the winter in squashes, nuts, and what have you. And then it has to go over to spring and summer, where there's a lot of grasses and fruits and plentiful. So I think it's wise to prepare your gut. But it's also, so you can do that between seasons, like winter to spring, and then summer to fall, which I usually recommend for my patients, my warriors, just to signify there's a change coming. And honestly, there's also the the secular type of fasting where you just fast because you want to lose weight, because 1 in 3 Americans is obese. And with that obesity comes high cholesterol, diabetes, heart attack, and all the other crap that comes with it. No doubt, because we eat too much and we don't exercise enough. And I think because we don't have any spirituality. That goes a long way because it brings down inflammation. And it calms your brain, and it gets you better sleep. It also helps you to reflect. All that aside, though, when you do fast, which is why I brought that up, in religion, it's meant, one of the reasons for fasting is because it gives you a little bit of clarity. After you get past the hangriness, or hungry anger, the hangry, there's a Snickers commercial. They show somebody of an actor that's complaining a lot, and then you give them a Snickers bar and they turn into a real person. Well, That's true because, and I've had many of my warrior patients try to fast, and it would induce chest pain, cramping, headaches, irritability. That's because I think, if you want to break it down into mechanics, it's because of insulin sensitivity. And if you have a whole bunch of medical problems and they're like controlled but about to flare up, when you fast, you flare up because you've broken your balance. If you're that fine-lined between being healthy and being diseased, and then you suddenly push the paradigm, you move, barometric pressure changes, somebody dies in your family, you lose your job, or you stop eating, you're going to push over to something bad. But again, there's ways to take that into account and ease yourself into it. I usually would suggest, and I'll put links down below because I don't have anything to show you, but I usually suggest that if it's insulin sensitivity that you need because you're insulin resistant, and it means your body is so overwhelmed with glucose and waves of insulin because of the carbohydrates and the sugars that you might oblige in, that you're not supposed to oblige in, or alcohol you're not supposed to oblige in all the time, well, your body tries to defend itself by ignoring insulin. And at the time of your indulgence, that's fair. But when your body needs brain power, it needs fuel. When your body needs to run from a saber-toothed tiger, I don't know why I say that all the time, but there's no more saber-toothed tigers, a coyote, wolf, run away from a car that's about to hit you. You need energy quick when you have to figure out a calculus program, solve a problem at work with engineering. You need building blocks, you need glucose. You need fats, and sometimes not fats, but more glucose. Sometimes when you need to call on that fast and you're insulin resistant, that means the glucose is there in the bloodstream, but it can't get into the brain cell because you don't have any insulin, or it doesn't recognize insulin. Insulin is the key that opens a door that gets the glucose in the cell to use the energy. But if you're insulin resistant, it takes a little bit of time to get in there. There's a back door where muscle can use it. That's really cool. The muscle is the only cell in the body that doesn't need insulin to get glucose in, just in case you do have to run from a saber or a coyote or a car or something bad like that, bad guy. So muscle can do it, but no other cells can do that. And it's important though that if you do have insulin resistance or you're diabetic, don't just jump into fasting. Get your doctor to coach you or get you a little bit of insulin sensitivity. And there's ways to do that. I do have something of an old video. You can use medicines to make you insulin sensitive. There's Januvia. What else do I have here? And so in Vocana, there's medicines, not insulin, but there's medicines that make the body sensitive. I have Ozempic somewhere. It's an injectable. All these medicines are great. There's berberine. That's an herb that I suggest to everybody. There's things that'll make you insulin sensitive, again, so that when you do fast or withdraw from calories suddenly, boom, you can do that because you can call on fat. All of us usually have, I'd say 1/3, have enough fat here in the apron, the omentum, that you can use that as your fuel. And most of us will have a little bit of glucose in muscle to sprint a little short distance, and in the liver to run away from something. But that gets exhausted quickly. So it's important to, flex your muscle and exercise your insulin sensitivity again before you fast. So if you don't have a doctor that understands that or is willing to help you with herbs or ketosis, that's another thing I suggest. You can actually take ketone salts. Ketone salts, as long as your gut's okay, will kind of give you a taste, give your metabolism a taste of ketosis. I usually suggest before going into a Prolon fast, and I just happen to have a Prolon box here. I've done a lot of videos on Prolon, and this is an easy 5-day fast. I think this is genius, but it's also backed up by science. It's a little expensive though. However, if you wanted to just taste fasting based on science by Walter Longo and his crew out in California, that's great. I think the prices are dropping. Used to be untouchable, like $200 or $300 for 5 days, but it's easy. It's in a box. It's very novel. You just follow the packets that you eat in soups and bars and vitamins, and it gets you through 5 days. The first time I did it, I made my own, calculated using the FMD or Dr. Longo's book, calculated my own 5-day fast, and it was pretty decent. And then the next time I did it a month later, I bought one of those boxes. Fantastic. That was when I was a vegan, and I was having a little bit of a problem building muscle, losing fat. And after my second box, third box, I just started sprouting muscle that I didn't think I had before. And I burned a lot of fat, and it dropped me down into the 140s. I was hanging out into the 150s and 60s. And to me, I know you guys probably think I'm skinny, but to me, I think I do best at 139, 141. I think that's my fighting weight. Now, going into my 70s, I think you're supposed to pack on muscle. I'm going to be turning 60 this year, man. But my thinking is that if you can go into your later years fit, then you'll last longer. Let me repeat that. If you can maximize on your fitness, your gut health, your mental dexterity, by the time you get to what my daughter says is old, 50 to 60, you will probably join the longevity club or the centenarians, God willing. There's other things that come down the line, genetics, but I really think that if you live the proper building blocks of life, you'll at least have the highest chances of getting there. If you ignore all that and you just say, I'm too busy to be a vegetarian, or I'm too busy to have my fibers, vegetables, fruits, legumes, beans, seeds, nuts, I just have my meat because Sigil said go carnivore. Nah, you gotta be careful. I go through a lot of experiments to get myself optimized. And so the reason I'm holding the coffee up is part of fasting, if you just want to push back, like Jason Funk said, your breakfast or your first meal of the day to say 11 or 12 to make it like an 18-hour fast. I think one of the things is you can indulge in coffee as long as there's no crap in it. You might even, if you want to taste a little bit of sweetness and want to see cafe au lait, you can use MCT oil powder. I don't think MCT oil by itself is good. It tastes nasty and it can affect the gut, but I think the powder by Quest is awesome. I'll put a link to the video I did. It usually serves everybody that wants to see psychologically white stuff or cafe au lait. And it does give a little bit of a sweetness, and it is ketones. So it gives the body a taste of ketones when you're fasting. Fasting gives you a little bit of ketosis. Exercise fasted gives you ketosis. It's a little bit tough to do if you're a 1 hour cardio person and you go do that without an empty stomach and you haven't eaten since the night before. It's going to be tough to get used to. So take it easy the first time you do this. And there's ways to do intermittent fasting. So let me just review. I talked about Prolon. That's a 5-day fast, and I'll have links to videos I've done before. Kind of easy. Third day is really nasty the first time around, but as you do more and more of these, I mean, that Prolon box is made to improve cancer outcome in people who have chemotherapy, and the data shows it helps. Also, the new data on multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, diabetes, athleticism, it's all positive. It's only 5 days. And there's probably gradations where you can make your own or do 3 days, I believe. But if you want to live long and beat cancer, the Prolon's awesome, if you can find a deal. And if you can't do that, then you can try intermittent fast. Oh, wait, one more thing. If you do Prolon, the suggestion is if you're going to fight cancer, and I've had a couple patients fight cancer, you do 5 days, once a month, for 3 months straight. So let's say the first week of every month, you do a 5-day Prolon box. And that will be painful the first month. It'll be easier the second month, be a piece of cake the third month. You might even do it yourself thereafter once a month. But it gets tiring and it gets expensive, so you can make your own thing. And you can see significant changes in waistline too. If that's all you're doing it for, to shrink your waistline, that's fair. I think there's other reasons to do it. Lower your cholesterol, become insulin sensitive, maybe find a new you or find a new meaning to life, change your thinking about suffering, find spirituality. So regardless, the idea with Prolon is strong and the data is there. The idea with intermittent fasting, which is kind of the misnomer, you should just call it timed feeding. That's what they all are. You time your feeding for the just starting your first meal at 11 or 12, and then you stop your last meal at like 8 or 9, and that's it. So you're fasting overnight. Usually when you sleep, you're not eating, so you're fasting at least 6 hours, most humans. But if you can push that paradigm to make it 12 hours, 18 hours, then not only do you give the signal to your body and your metabolism that we're in a little bit of starvation. And when you give that signal of starvation, the body just gets ready for a fight. It gets rid of all the senescent cells. Those precancerous cells, they die fast. Most organs will shrink. I told a patient of mine in the Netherlands that because of the fibroids she has, it's not documented, but I would postulate that fibroids and organs, the liver, the kidney, the brain, the heart, they shrink a bit when going through a fasting. Because again, everything contracts, even the gut microbiome, it contracts too because there's not that much food around. So, but you're just fooling all these things, all these organs and the gut microbiome, you're fooling them to make them think that it's starvation. But technically, you starve for 18 hours, or okay, we'll start out with 12. We starve for 12 hours, then you feed. So you suddenly have some food like you did before. So the signal is gone, but it's still impactful to your metabolism. You still engage insulin sensitivity. You still engage insulin sensitivity. So you're training your muscles and your liver and your brain to get used to opening the door, letting the glucose in anytime it wants. And maybe when you eat your Big Mac, or no, you shouldn't do that. When you eat your food, sometimes when you're insulin resistant, it doesn't go to your muscle, it doesn't go to your brain, it goes right here because the signal is said that you're insulin resistant. Where am I supposed to put this food? I'm resistant, I'm starving. Although I'm eating, it's not there. There's no lock and key working. So the body just says, put it in the fat. And that's why people get fatter, is because they're insulin resistant. It's terrible until you reverse that with medicines, which do work, like I mentioned, or you train yourself to do it on your own without medicines, and it can be done. I've done it with many of my patients. Sometimes some of my patients are in a hurry to move, and I think it's fair as a physician, if I see somebody is demotivating really quickly and they're losing their steam, I will deploy prescription medicines. So this is not cookie cutter. Medicine is not meant to be cookie cutter. So when your doctor says, yeah, here's your numbers, compared to the rest of the population, here's where you sit, you should start this based on the population studies. I think that's unfair. It's nice when you take care of a large community, but me, I close the door, I'm taking care of one person in the room or on the telephone or on the video call, and that is it. So I can apply the population data to this person, but I manipulate it so it benefits the person. I'll always try to find a different study to encourage them and motivate them to move forward. And if they fail, then we just come up with a different pathway. That's the beauty. I create a map to get to goal, but the thing is, it's not just one trail that gets to the end goal or the summit. I can create a whole bunch of different ones. So, and that's the problem with, I think, Western medicine, is it's my way or the highway. And if you stop the medicine, you're a bad patient. Get out of my practice. That's the way it goes. If you don't want immunizations, has the schedule assessed by American College of Pediatrics or American Board of Family Medicine, you're out of here because you're non-compliant, which is really bad. But that's the way it goes because insurance says, hey, you didn't give, they tell the doctor you didn't give these vaccines, so you are not practicing medicine right, so we're not going to pay you anymore. And that's the threat to the doctors. That's why the motivation for the doctors is you must follow the protocol. So that's the way it works. And all of us as doctors that take insurance have to follow the protocol, and we have to see patients really quick. I'm sorry, I'm kind of diverting, but every time I talk about insurance-based medicine, I always go down that dark hole. Regardless, when it comes to fasting, there's great things that you can do, not just lose weight, but you can find your way, find your meaning. You can change around, this is a crappy life too. I can endure this because I have the power to do it. You're actually freeing yourself from being a slave. If you're a slave to Netflix, a slave to the hospital and its rules, a slave to your manager, and a slave to the gas pump and your expensive car or your expensive watch. You don't have to be. And that's where fasting from materialistic stuff comes in handy, and food. But we'll talk about the materialistic stuff in some other video. I just want to freestyle about food. But as far as intermittent fasting versus a prolonged box, this is the prolonged box that I just showed you is quick and you can see fast results, but it's painful. The intermittent fasting, if you choose to just say stop your, this is what I do. I stop my eating at about 8 o'clock, 8:30. And then I start my eating, except for tea. I don't really drink coffee. I just wanted to show you this for the video. I get a lot of reflux still, or it just doesn't resonate with me. It's too bitter. And you would, I know you're going to ask, why don't you just put MCT oil powder in it? Well, I could, but I choose not to. I don't need it. I just did it for you guys. Cheers. So the idea would be, if you do intermittent fasting, it's not going to be as powerful or noticeable as the prolonged box in one attempt, 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months, but you'll have to continue it for the long haul, and then you'll see the results. So if you are trying intermittent fasting, don't just look after 30 days and say, nothing worked, I'm still the same. My scale's the same. Don't do that. Because I would always suggest that you wait at least 3 months. I think 3 months is fair to have the metabolism engage. And here's the other thing, which my warriors know. When you're trying to cut back your calories or you're just macros, now it does require you track your macros, track your calories, track your meal times. So that's a pain in the ass if you're not used to it. I can kind of look at a plate and just estimate what proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are, maybe calorie count. So I tell my warriors, just take pictures of your meals. Don't be shy. I want to see everything, and I'll calculate it for you. And then after about 7 average days, if there's no holidays and no moms coming over, because moms love cooking, and I used to love my mom cooking. After 7 days, that should be an average, and I can tell you, okay, you're leaning too heavy, and most people are the same thing. Too many carbs, not enough protein, especially if you're middle age. So, I mean, the default is just move over to more protein, but sometimes you actually have to see that or hear it from a doctor. I think a lot of us will say, I'm starving, I'm hangry, I'm really cutting down, but then when I see the pictures, it's like, yeah, but that's not 1,500 calories. So I would say always let me and your coach see what you're eating. Research, MyFitnessPal is pretty decent. You can always try to use the prolonged box 3 in a row or intermittent fast. You choose your time periods for eating and choose your time periods for fasting. Try not to break it, but I'd also sprinkle in a little exercise in there too to grow muscle. And remember, when you grow muscle, your scale will actually get heavier, but you'll see less of this waistline and butt and wiggly arms. You'll see less of that in time. That takes time to burn off. If it's been 50 years in the making, don't expect changes in 1 month. Don't beat yourself up. That's self-sabotage. And if you're not sure what to do, and you do want medicines, or you have medical problems, you should ask your doctor first. If you don't have a good doctor that's helping you, come see me. Look at my link down below. I take internet consults. Again, I see people from around the world, and I give them coaching advice. So hopefully this gives you a couple of ideas about intermittent fasting. The last thing I'll leave you with is that in some cases, just the simple animal studies have shown if you take rat chow and you calculate 24 hours of what a rat would eat, and you just compress that same volume into a smaller feeding window, same crappy rat chow, that rat will lose weight. So no question, if you just compress everything into a smaller window, continue with your Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's steak, egg, and cheese bagels like I used to eat, and your sugar and your coffee, just compress that. That'll get you somewhere. Probably take you 6 months, but still a direction. So there's always a way around it. But bottom line, you're not alone. And all of us are struggling. I'm still struggling to get the best I can get or optimize myself before 60. I told you all that follow me on my channel. And by the way, if you like what I put out several videos a week. Hit the subscribe button, put a comment down below. But I've told all my followers I'm going to hit Everest Base Camp by the time I turn 60. It's not going to happen this year or this summer because I'm taking my son to college. I'll be an empty nester. But in my 60th year, I'm hitting Everest Base Camp. I promise you. But that's what I have to do to keep myself engaged. And since I promised you, now I have to, because I'm motivated to live up to my word. So if you don't have a word or you don't have a promise that you've made, come get me and I'll help you make a promise. So thank you for watching up until this point in time. Stay safe. COVID's still out there. And by all means, heart attacks are still out there. So stay healthy, move, get some spirituality, try a little fasting, and happy Easter.